It was a day that had been coming for quite some time. Lord of the Rings Conquest was supposed to be a fan-made resurrection of the 2009 console classic. Yet after years of work, updates, and finally a portion of the game in a playable state, it just wasn't meant to be. So how was this hyped classic killed long before its time? But is it truly over for good? Well, maybe not. Lord of the Rings Conquest was an action game released in 2009. It was developed by Pandemic Studios and published by Electronic Arts. The game let players fight in the battles of the Lord of the Rings movies. You can play as both forces of good and evil. It's pretty cool, and I spent hours and hours playing this title. Coming back from school, split screen with my mate on the Xbox 360, there are no better experiences than that. Well, unless you're talking about Star Wars Battlefront 2. These are actually made by the same studio, Pandemic. They made Star Wars Battlefront 1 and Star Wars Battlefront 2, until they were approached with the Lord of the Rings license to make something similar, but within that universe. Players were so excited because they could experience those same incredible battles from Star Wars Battlefront, but now with the Lord of the Rings skin. Whether it's playing in those huge battles of Helm's Deep, Minas Tirith, but with our favourite characters like Gandalf and Sauron. When it came out, it was available on several platforms. It came out on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Windows, and interestingly, Nintendo DS, although that version is pretty much lost to history like most DS games of the past. However, despite its hype and the pedigree behind the development team, reception was actually pretty mixed. Some players loved being able to explore Middle-earth and battle with magic and swords, but critics, at least most of them, said the game had a lot of problems. And actually going back and playing it now, it really did, especially in terms of depths. Okay, it was still a reskin of Star Wars Battlefront 2, but with Lord of the Rings, but that was about it. In terms of actual real new additions, there was very few. A lot of the critics back in the day mentioned things like repetitive gameplay, something I definitely agree with, and a lot of technical issues. Yes, bugs are still, even to this day, rife. Okay, I say to this day as if you can still find copies. It's very rare. Despite that, fans of Lord of the Rings still found something to enjoy, especially the co-op battles. Sadly though, Pandemic, the developers, closed down not long after the game's release. They couldn't make any more updates or sequels, and I think there were even some DLCs planned. Lord of the Rings Conquest, it wasn't a perfect game, but it still holds a very, very special place in my heart, and I continue to hop on it every now and then with a completely legal version of it on PC. In terms of gameplay, Conquest allowed players to control 4 different classes: Warrior, Archer, Scout, and Mage. Each class has its own unique abilities and weapons, which made for some varied strategies and playstyles. The game also featured special hero modes, so if you got enough kills or got enough points, or even if you were just kind of lucky, I think a lot of the time it was just luck of the draw, you get to choose a hero based on the map. For example, if you're on Helm's Deep, you could play as Aragorn. If you're on Isengard, you could play as Treebeard, or even Gandalf. Some of the funniest moments were playing as these heroes fighting against the absolutely horrifically dumb AI, being able to kick them off walls and of course into the pits of the Mires of Moria. It was a brilliant thing. Yet all of these heroes, whilst they were cool, they were actually just mainly reskins of the classes. Of course, Legolas was just a reskin version of the Archer with a bit more of a powerful bow. Aragorn was just a better infantryman. Frodo was just a scout who could go invisible. Okay, it's Lord of the Rings. And of course, Gandalf was just a version of the mage, which could shoot powerful weapons and hit people with his staff. Actually, meleeing as a mage, or in this case Gandalf, was sometimes more powerful than actually using any of your spells. Even with its flaws though, it managed to capture those epic scales of the battles. I mean, I remember the most iconic mission, which was Helm's Deep at the beginning, or storming the gates of Minas Tirith, and it followed it beat by beat, whether it was trying to take out the explodey boys in Helm's Deep, but then inevitably causing a breach and having to fight in different areas, or of course Minas Tirith, fighting on the walls or even down in Pelennor Field with the Oliphants that you'd soon have to take out. I loved playing as the scouts, being able to turn invisible, going up behind the ogres and stab them, or even going up behind some of the enemy hero characters that would be on the battlefield and being able to do your assassination, which was basically a one-hit kill to anybody. So even if the enemy had the best hero on the battlefield, if you were playing as an invisible scout, nobody was safe. There was a few different game modes within it. You had the campaign modes, which was the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You basically played through every single mission that was from the films as mentioned, with cutscenes from the movies as well. It didn't quite have the custom cutscenes that were made in Star Wars Battlefront 2. You know, the 501st campaign that followed those guys through the films, and they had the custom cutscenes within the game. Lord of the Rings Conquest didn't have that. Whether it was just because of budget restraints or it was just cut, they instead just implemented bits of the film into the title itself. But then you also had a second campaign, and this was a kind of unique twist, because this was what if Frodo actually failed to destroy the One Ring. You played on the side of Dark, Sauron's forces, as you conquered Middle-earth. There was an amazing mission where you could go into Hobbiton or the Shire, and you could play as orcs and, of course, ogres stomping on hobbits. It was absolutely beautiful and somewhat sociopathic, but hey, I would do it again in an instant. Speaking of instant, the other game mode was instant action. Much like the Star Wars Battlefront 2 predecessor, it basically allowed you to pick any army, any map, any side. You could jump in wherever. There was also multiplayer modes like Capture the Flags, Team Deathmatch, so on and so forth, but they were much less impacting on the overall game itself. It was beautiful, but it went away for some time, and as I mentioned, it's so hard to get hold of a copy now. Of course, there's no sort of online or multiplayer components these days, and if you have it on Xbox 360, sure, you can still play it there. But PC, pretty much impossible to find, unless you know where to look. So, when I heard that there was going to be a remake, or should I say a remaster, reimagining of Lord of the Rings Conquest, I was beyond ecstatic, because it was one of my favourite titles of all time. It started its development with so many models and little bits and trailers being released. The elves that would sit on top of Helm's Deep, the armor and the detail that was put in was fantastic. And in fact, I actually did a little bit of voiceover for one of their dev blogs back in the day. Being able to see how each of these models had been lovingly crafted, and then finally we actually got a playable version of what Helm's Deep would soon become. Do you know that first mission from Lord of the Rings Conquest? Well, we had it recreated within Unreal Engine, and my god, it was beautiful. Whilst it had its issues, there was so much promise. We've made it to the castle. We're now in third-person mode. So it seems like there is a full campaign with a new story that we never actually got. You can change perspectives with the C mode, but because of that motion blur, I'm going to have to stay in third person for now. So I'm able to complete this. Jesus Christ. For a second, I was walking up here, and I was just not doing any commentary. I always forgot that I was recording. This is so cool. All right, everybody. How are you doing? Wow. All right, lads. It's just me bursting open the door.
This is ill news indeed, if the forces of Isengard will be upon us by nightfall.
Oh, yes. Look at this. The texture work and the modeling. This whole map is goddamn beautiful. The Helm's Deep map in Lord of the Rings Conquest was so iconic, and it was such a great opening. But it is time. And so it begins. And so it really begins. So they have the menu screens just like they have it in the original Lord of the Rings Conquest, and of course, before it Star Wars Battlefront. I'm assuming later we're going to get more classes, but for now, we have a Galadrim archer. Renowned for their bows of great size and power, it's matched by few in Middle-earth. Their enemies will sure meet a swift ending from afar. And of course, we've got the Royal Guard as well. We're going to go with the bowman, because I love the goddamn bowman.
They have set the fire of Orthanc at the wall.
Aim for the neck. We got one hit. Keep firing, lads. So at this point in time, we're just telling them to volley fire. We're not getting into combat ourselves. But I'm enjoying just volley firing these boys. Uh-oh. Guys, he's... Just keep firing, please. Just keep firing. I'm just going to spam F so they keep firing. There's one more. Good job. There we go. It is a completion. Okay, so it is very clear there is very little in terms of gameplay within this so far. As mentioned, this is just a prologue preview, so hey-ho. We got to run around a little bit, but we saw a cool battle at least. It seems like the combat system hasn't been worked in just yet. And there we have it, a victory. Now, of course, this is going to be a full game later on with full gameplay and full missions, much like the original, but expanded. But I wouldn't worry too much. But then it went dark for a while. The developers actually stopped talking about it, and there'd been no new information or dev blogs. Until last year, where I got a message on Discord. So, if you've not noticed, most of our videos on YouTube have been taken down. Why? Well, let's do a clean explanation on what this means for the future of the game. In summary, Warner Bros., Amazon, EA, New Line Cinema, and Middle-earth Enterprises, yes, all of them, have sent a DMCA and infringement notice. Which might sound terrifying, especially when you've got all these billion-dollar companies coming after you. Something that I kind of predicted, since nobody gets away from making fan stuff of Lord of the Rings. It might seem dumb if you're not making any money, but that's just the way these companies work. Yet, because it was just a notice, it means that actually what they can do in Lord of the Rings Conquest is take down the website and just not include any of the copyright names, but continue developing the game just with a different name. And whilst, yes, it still looks like Lord of the Rings, now it's not Lord of the Rings Conquest, it's Shadows of the Past. Apparently they can still include copyrighted games in the name, so Helm's Deep will still be called Helm's Deep, Legolas will be Legolas, but the music has to be changed, a lot of the licensing and imagery has to be changed as well. And this is just one of the things that happens to always come about. This happened for Battle of Middle-earth Reforged. I think going to a different franchise, Pokemon Uranium was a title that spent years and years of development, and then it was released. And that's when Pokemon decided to strike it and take it down. Now, this hasn't been taken down. They've just basically been asked to change all their names. But that's why nothing has really come out of it in the last few months, because of all this mess that's having to move around it. And everything has sort of gone to pot. But the development is still happening. Shadows of the Past is coming. And more recently, we've actually seen a new developer stream. Yes, there is still a lot of development, and it looks like Unreal Engine 4 is still where it's at. Some of the new models have been shown as well, and some of the new maps once more. So the game is still coming. It's just been a bit in silent because of a lot of legal issues. But because of the changed name, and because of using some of the more copyrighted stuff, it looks like Shadows of the Past, not Lord of the Rings Conquest Remastered anymore, will be in a playable version at some point in the future. But for now, we still have that demo, and we still have a lot of cool gameplay from it. So I guess that's what we're going to have to put up with. I thought I'd just give you guys a quick update of what's been going on. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. But until then, I will see you in the next one.